Hare Krishna, Yadunandan Prabhu, Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Kindly accept my humble obeisances.
Please accept mine.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances.
Please accept mine. Thank you very much for coming punctually. We will start with Srila Prabhupada's Jai Radha Madhava, as we are doing every day.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
1 second.
Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Just give me 1 second.
Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Smatram Sapri Prajavacharya Sattvatsmana Siddham Saraswati Swami Bhagavad Gita Ananta Kodi Vaishnava
Mukam karoti vachalam pangul malangayate girim yatkripa tamakam bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyam Ishwaram Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyaga Chakarini Panchakalpa Tirupyascha Kripa Sindhupya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you very much for coming for today's class on Sri Ishopanishad as part of your Bhakti Sastri study course. Can you hear? How can you hear me today? Yesterday was in Madrid. Today I am in New Brajamandala. So should I turn off the camera like yesterday, or can you hear me well?
Hare Krishna Maharaji Danot Pranam. It is fine, Maharaji, today. It is fine. You can keep the camera on.
Okay. So
It is very much perfect, Maharaj.
if at any point there is problem with the camera, please let me know so I can turn off the camera so you can hear better. So today we will be reading and discussing verses 1 through 3 from Sri Ishopanishad, together with the invocation which we read and discussed yesterday. These verses explain Sambandha jnana, or the knowledge of the relationship between God, Krishna, the living entities, we, individual souls, and material nature. Yesterday it was already explained how the Lord is a complete whole, and He's the origin of everyone and everything. And He remains complete even though those entities who emanate from Him are complete in themselves. So the position of Krishna as the origin was very clearly mentioned in yesterday's verse. Today we will see how he's the owner, he's the proprietor of everyone and everything that exists. And then that when we acknowledge this principle, we do not get entangled in the laws of matter, and we do not suffer like ordinary people do. We remain unaffected by the laws of karma, even if we are living in the world of karma, by following the principle explained in Mantra 1 of this important Upanishad. On the other hand, for those who do not follow this principle of understanding and accepting and behaving accordingly to the principle that God is the proprietor and we have only an allotted quota, the future is actually dark. And the destiny implies to go down into lower regions of material existence in which the suffering increases the lower we go down into that direction. So this is the introduction to the topic. We will focus on the first part of the class, the first hour on Mantra 1, and the second hour on Mantras 2 and 3. That's the intention. Of course, we will be flexible according to the amount of questions you may have. The Mantra 1, as you may remember, is also a key memory verse for your Bhakti Sastri study. So it's a verse to memorize not just in English, but also in Sanskrit. We won't read all the purpose because we don't have the time for it, but we will read the verses and part of the purpose. So I'll read the Sanskrit and then whoever likes to read can read the translation, and then we will read also some sections of the purport. We will go step by step. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita magrita kasyasvitanam. Translation, please, whoever likes to read.
Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one must not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you very much. So this verse is extremely important. It is, we could say, the main sutra or Paribhasha Sutra of the Sri Upanishad, the main verse. From this verse, the teachings of the whole Upanishad unfold. It is very, very, very important for both for our own personal understanding and realization of Krishna consciousness, and also for preaching Krishna consciousness in many different forums. Later on, we will do an exercise on how to use this verse for preaching. So in Srila Prabhupada's purport, we could divide the purport in these 4 sections. The first part of the purport describes how Vedic knowledge is the best means to understand reality. And this is something we already read and discussed in relation to the introduction of the Sri Upanishad in regards to Srila Prabhupada's lecture on the teachings of the Vedas in London in 1969. So we won't go back and discuss all the points because this was already covered. The 4 types of defects of the conditioned soul and how the Vedas are the most reliable authority to understand the truth, as indicated in the metaphor of the mother. The mother is the best authority to reveal the identity of the father. In the second part of the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains how God, the Supreme Person, is the owner and the source of everything that exists. And he continues in the purport by explaining how we should therefore remember this and know that we are not the proprietors, but we should accept that we are allotted only a certain quota for our livelihood. So to be able to make our livelihood in a decent way for ourselves and those of you, for those who are family people, like many of you, to also for your families, like that. But take only whatever we need as our allotted quota. Otherwise, if human beings do not understand and follow this principle, there cannot be peace in the world. There is no way that there will be peace unless human beings understand the Ishavasya principle, which is taught in this verse. And in the last part of the purport, Srila Prabhupada goes as far as to state that even morality and whatever groups, or Prabhupada talks about the isms, whatever isms such as vegetarianism, veganism, altruism, and so on, without the Ishavasya principle, are born to failure and actually will produce karmic reactions. Will not be the solution. And Prabhupada states there is no harm in performing philanthropic work, that's fine, as long as it is founded on the Ishavasya principle. This is particularly important. So there is a question: what are the key components of the Ishavasya principle? I'm asking the first question, not the second on the screen. So what are the key components of the Ishavasya principle? If we have to divide it into two components, what would you say? Looking at the verse, and I assume you have read Srila Prabhupada's purport in your own study time. If you have not done, you can catch up as soon as possible. But so what will you say? What are the two key components of the Ishavasya principle?
Maharaj, should I say?
Yes, please.
Maharaj, the main thing is not considering ourselves as proprietor and remaining satisfied with whatever the quota is allotted to us. That is one of the two principles, and that is the main thing. Thank you, Maharaj.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very good. So to not consider ourselves the proprietors and to accept only our quota, yes, this is a very important principle. And in relation to the first statement of Rasraman Krishna Prabhu, what would you say is another a key principle of the Ishavasya principle?
Maharaj, can I?
Yes, please.
Maharaj, I might be wrong also, but I think that it can be the 15.15 of Bhagavad Gita verse. Vedeshcha sarver aham eva vedyo. That Krishna is to be known by all the Vedas, and so many verses from the Bhagavad Gita, like aham sarvasya prabhavo. That Krishna is to be known by everything. The first thing.
Okay, I mean, the statement is correct philosophically. I will say, nevertheless, that in relation to the Ishavasya principle, it's not so directly. I will be more precise in the question. If we are not the proprietors, who is the proprietor?
Krishna.
Krishna. So that's actually the first part of the principle. Ishavasia midam sarvam. That God, Isha, the Supreme Lord, He's the owner of everything and everyone. And then the second principle, which derives from this, is what Rasraman Krishna Prabhu stated, that we are not the proprietor. He's the proprietor, and therefore we're entitled only to our quota. And we should therefore share as good brothers and sisters, share with others, or whatever we get. If we are getting surplus by the grace of Krishna, we should be generous and share it with others who may be lacking. Yesterday morning, I was in Madrid, the capital of Spain, and the devotees have a very nice Food for Life program, modest, not very big, but they distribute like 50 to 70 meals to people who are in need nearby the temple. They go to a plaza outside and they distribute prasadam. They also have a lunch program, and people come and contribute donations. And with what they get from the lunch program, they're able to offer the Food for Life to all people who don't have the means to contribute any donation. So recently there was somebody, one fellow, put a complaint in the municipality stating that the devotees had a restaurant which was not declared as a legal restaurant, and so on. And the municipality sent a letter asking for documents and for legal permissions and so on. So I decided to, in order to help the devotees, I visited a church. This is a Roman Catholic church, which is very experienced in doing charity work in Spain. I wanted to get their advice for legal registration, and so that the temple can, we can have a similar situation than they have, in case what they have is better than what we have. We do have a legal kitchen, but we didn't register as a restaurant and so on. Anyway, I went there, and this was quite an old church, quite big, and they had a very nice program of helping people who were in need. And what I liked of what I saw is that they were doing within their particular faith, their followers of Jesus Christ. What they were doing it as an offering to God. So they were giving. It was not cooked food. They were giving rice and pasta and chickpeas and things like that. Things which are, these were all vegetarian products, and they were giving, and they were doing as a service to God. So I felt inspired to see that even people from other religious traditions, they may do some good work as an offering to God. They were not just doing it as charity for the sake of the charity, but they wanted to please God. And they were asking people, they had a nice sign which was saying, you can offer what you can. That was one sign. So for people to donate. And then they had another sign stating, you ask for what you need. So the mood was very, very generous. Of course, we have wonderful Food for Life programs. I know in India, ISKCON is distributing so many thousands of meals to children in many schools all over India. And during the COVID crisis, so much prasadam has been distributed. So in that sense, our society is a wonderful example of charity work following the Ishavasya principle. So anyway, I thought to refer to that because this is an experience I had yesterday in connection to ISKCON, and they were very kind. They were giving good attention. They gave good advice and information that we can use for our missionary work of prasadam distribution. Let's now go and read some parts of the purport on the explanation of this Ishavasya principle. Anyone likes to read from what's on the screen, please? We will read about 3 or 4 paragraphs. I'll be moving and then I'll stop moving when the whole reading has been done.
Okay. The Lord's proprietorship over everything within the universe is confirmed in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 7.4 and 7.5, where para and apara prakriti are discussed. The elements of nature, earth, water, fire, air, either mind, intelligence, and ego, all belong to the Lord's inferior material energy, Apara Prakriti. Whereas the living being, the organic energy, is his superior energy, Paraprakriti. Both of these energies, both of these prakritis or energies are emanations from the Lord, and ultimately he is the controller of everything that exists. There is nothing in the universe that does not belong to either the Para or the Apara Prakriti. Therefore, everything is a property of the Supreme Being, because the Supreme Being, the absolute personality of Godhead, is complete person. He has complete and perfect intelligence to adjust everything by means of his different potencies. The Supreme Being is often compared to a fire, and everything organic or inorganic is compared to the heat and light of that fire. Just as fire distributes energy in the form of heat and light, the Lord displays his energy in different ways. He thus remains the ultimate controller, sustainer, and dictator of everything. He is the possessor of all. He is the possessor of all potencies, the knower of everything, and the benefactor of everything. He is full in inconceivable opulence, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. One should therefore be intelligent enough to know that except for the Lord, no one is the proprietor of anything. One should accept only those things that are set aside by the Lord as his quota. The cow, for instance, gives milk, but she does not take milk. She eats grass and straw, and her milk is destinated as food for human beings. Such is the arrangement of the Lord. Thus, we should be satisfied with those things he has kindly set aside for us, and we should always consider to whom those things we possess actually belong. Take, for example, our dwelling, which is made of earth, wood, stone, iron, cement, and so many other material things. If we think in terms of Sri Isha Upanishad, we must know that we cannot produce any of these building materials ourselves. We can simply bring them together and transform them into different shapes by our labor. A laborer cannot claim to be a proprietor of a thing just because he has worked hard to manufacture it. And in the modern society, there is always a great quarrel between the laborer and the capitalists. The quarrel has taken an international shape, and the world is in danger. Men face one another in enmity and snarl just like cats and dogs. Sri Upanishad cannot give advice to the cats and dogs, but it can deliver the message of Godhead to man through the bona fide acharyas, holy teachers. The human race should take the Vedic wisdom of Sri Ishopanishad and not quarrel over material possessions. One must be satisfied with whatever privileges are given to him by the mercy of the Lord. There can be no peace if the communists or capitalists or any other party claims proprietorship over the resources of nature, which are entirely the property of the Lord. The capitalists cannot curb the communists simply by political maneuvering, nor can the communists defeat the capitalists simply by fighting for stolen bread. If they do not recognize is the proprietorship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the property they claim to be their own is stolen. Consequently, they will be liable to punishment by the laws of nature. Nuclear bombs are in the hands of both communists and capitalists. And if both do not recognize the proprietorship of the Supreme Lord, it is certain that these bombs will ultimately ruin both parties. Thus, in order to save themselves and bring peace to the world, both parties must follow the instructions of Sri Ishopanishad.
Thank you very much. We see how Srila Prabhupada explains the topic with very, very practical examples of like how the workers are not the owners of the house they are building, they are doing their work, but they not just because they build the house, it belongs to them. And the last example Srila Prabhupada gave, referring to capitalist and communist, is actually very, very relevant to the present world situation with the war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. I'm not sure how this is announced in India. Sometimes I have checked a little bit the titles of the news in India just to compare. I look a little bit as preachers, we need to be a little bit informed so we know what's happening in the world and can communicate properly with the people. But certainly there has been statements of risk of a third world war. In India, there has been any, have you heard anything about that? Or in India, at least here in Europe, they do speak about it.
Yes, Maharaj.
In India, you also heard in the news?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaj.
I think our Prime Minister Maharaj has been deliberately trying to kind of keep the situation under control by choosing not to vote, in favor of either of the two countries, because as a nation, we're scared to be on either side and then face an attack, if a war were to happen.
Yeah, yes, I did notice this, yes. Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi was, he preferred not to get involved and to protect India. That was my what I got from what I read 2 or 3 weeks ago. I read some article on that, not to get involved. So anyway, thank you for the information. But the point is that Srila Prabhupada wrote this purport, practically speaking, 50 years ago. And we see how still it is relevant, and it is very much an issue of the contemporary timings, and perhaps even more than ever before. Because even though it's true that communism doesn't have the same expression as it had before, with exception of a few countries like North Korea or Cuba. I have gone to preach to Cuba because it's a Spanish-speaking country. I have visited a few times this place. People are very pious, very nice. The country is in very bad shape because they have like blockage, commerce blockage coming from the US and other countries. So they're struggling to survive in terms of economic functioning. But the government is very determined to maintain their communist revolution ideology. When we go there, we don't get into politics. We just preach Krishna consciousness. It is better not to get into politics. We just should present the principles of like this, the Ishavasya principle and principles of Shastra, in order to help people to become Krishna conscious. And then if this will provoke any political changes, that's not our concern. Our concern is that the people become God conscious and become happy people, because they base their happiness in the real thing. They base their happiness in the Sanatana Dharma. And the Sanatana Dharma can function well in any political environment if devotees are allowed to practice and to present the principles of Sanatana Dharma. This was stated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1922 when Srila Prabhupada met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. I think all of you must know what happened, how when Srila Prabhupada in those years, he was known as Abai, that was the name given in his family. When Abai and his friend Naren reached the temple of the Gaudiya Math in Kolkata, in the road Ultaranga, ISKCON has bought that place again. It's a wonderful that the place has been bought by ISKCON devotees to render honor to this important meeting between Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada. And as you may remember, Srila Prabhupada at the time was a follower of Mohandas Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhiji, and he was dressed as in khadi as a follower of Gandhi. He was in favor of the movement for independence of India from British colonialism. And when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, immediately as they met, told Srila Prabhupada and his friend that you two are educated young men, why don't you preach the message of Krishna all over the world? Srila Prabhupada was impressed by the challenge the sadhu he just met was posing before him. Still, he felt the need to argue back, not with a challenging mood, but to test. Srila Prabhupada was a very intelligent young man at the time, so he wanted to test the proposition the sadhu was putting before him. And Srila Prabhupada said that we, India, are a dependent country. First, we need to get independence. Then we can talk about having a spiritual message of India. And he said, who will listen to the message of your Chaitanya? Of course, Prabhupada was himself a Gaudiya Vaishnava from birth, but he presented the question in this way, like an intelligent young man. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur responded in a way, highly eloquent way, which impressed and convinced Srila Prabhupada to surrender unto him. And basically told him that actually the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not depend on who is ruling the world. It is not meant to benefit a political party and to damage another, or to benefit one group of people against the interest of other group of people. But actually the message of Sriman Mahaprabhu is meant to enlighten the whole world and to benefit the whole world. Sanatana Dharma is for everything and everyone. So it will benefit everyone. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada states that it is not a matter of the capitalist or the communist, unless they integrate the Ishavasya principle into their ideology, their proposal is just effective and detrimental for the welfare of the world. It's only social political patchwork which will not function properly. Therefore, we present the Ishavasya principle as the solution. Why there is again risk of Third World War? We are supposed to have become more advanced human beings, but we are going back to square one. And we are again talking about Third World War. What it means is that human beings have not learned the lesson. And the lesson is given by this Ishavasya verse, that we all should acknowledge that everything belongs to God, and we should share whatever we have as good brothers and sisters, recognizing that we all are children of God in terms of spiritual beings emanating from Him. So we can use the metaphor of brotherhood and sisterhood in that context, in the spiritual sense. And if we learn this principle and educate others on this principle, then we can bring peace, lasting peace into the world. Otherwise, it is just not possible. And sooner or later, big catastrophe and big wars take place. Any questions or comments on what we have discussed so far of the Ishavasya principle and its application in the contemporary context, including socio-political environments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, like we see that even not only in the modern time, but even in Vedic times, we used to see wars. And majorly, these were to acquire land and to show your power. So it's not that like World War III or World War II, but even in Vedic times, like Mahabharata was there, or so many sacrifices were performed, like Yudhishthira Maharaj did Ratsui Yagya, where like he conquered everything. So we see that so many times, even in Vedic times, even Prahlad Maharaj fought. So like fighting is happening since very long. So how can we understand this thing that like humans are not learning from Second World War or First World War, but we see that even in Vedic times, similar kind of wars were happening.
Yes, that's a very good question. Yes, material world means war. I mean, in the material world, always there will be conflict of interest, because always there are people, or at least certain percentage of people, who are against the Ishavasya principle. So even if there is a good percentage of people who are in favor of the Ishavasya principle, always there will be some who will not be. And this could provoke certain war. Something to consider, nevertheless, is that we could say the percentage of, or the amount of wars and the gravity of them will always be less when Sanatana Dharma prevails than when it doesn't. So this is something to consider. Even we have like Kurukshetra, we read it lasted 18 days, was quite quick. Yes, there was war, was very heavy, many people died. Still there was, like nowadays, in wars, many times the civil population are unnecessarily harmed. Of course, also even we say in what we call Vedic times, times of yore, naturally when there is war, that's stated in the Bhagavatam, even innocent people directly or indirectly are affected. But still there is a difference between war in Vedic times and war in Kali Yuga context. But it is true that in the material world, war is practically unavoidable. Even we see in the world of the demigods, who normally they have a peaceful life in the higher planets, still sometimes they get attacked by the asuras, the asuric forces in the universe, and they have to defend themselves and to defend the universe. And even Krishna himself comes, Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge, the Bhagavatam states that in order to protect Indra, the king of heaven, from his enemies, the Lord appears in different incarnations. So that's there, but we should keep in mind there is a difference in terms of quantity and quality of wars in times where Sanatana Dharma prevails, or in times when it doesn't prevail, proportionately to the level of presence or absence of Sanatana Dharma. The least Sanatana Dharma presence is there, the more wars and heaviness of the wars are there, and the more Sanatana Dharma is prevalent, the more peaceful atmosphere reigns in human society. I hope this addresses the question and answers it.
Yes, Maharaj. So basically, Maharaj, if I reiterate, you are mentioning that if more devotees are there, if there are more followers of Sanatana Dharma, then the quality and quantity of war will be better. Means war is inevitable in material world, but at least the quality and quantity will be better.
Yes, it will be less quantity, and the level of destruction and innocent people suffering will be less.
Means civilians will be less.
Yes.
Civilians dying will be less. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Maharaj, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Though Maharaj, half of my question has already been answered to the question of Tarun Prabhu, still I would like to ask to my doubt. Actually, it's a philosophical question. For a long period of time, it has been haunting my mind. Maharaj, my question is, ISKCON has come into existence and more than half a century has passed. Number of books have been distributed all around the world. But still, I live in New Delhi, in India. And in New Delhi also, ISKCON Delhi temple has come into existence for more than 2 decades. But still, crime has not stopped. People are still waging wars. They are involved in sinful activities. So my question is, why? Why is this so? When so much preaching is there, so many books are there, then why is this so? Why people don't understand that Lord is everything, Lord is the original source and everything is coming from Lord only? Then still, why people want to establish their supremacy? Like in Russia and Ukraine context, we can say Russia is just bent on establishing its supremacy. So Maharaj, could you please address this?
Yes. Yes, it is a fact that big preaching has been done in India, and we do see how the movement is growing in India, and the number of temples you have in New Delhi are many more, and many more devotees are in India. There is a need to expand the preaching around the world. Sometimes I have suggested in some of my lectures that will be good to have more preachers from India coming to the West, because that's the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there are many more devotees in India now than in the early years of the movement. But of course, that's a topic aside. So the movement has grown. Still, people like Delhi, it's a very big city. How many million people live in New Delhi approximately?
But
30 million.
France, okay.
Means 3 crore or 30 million.
30 million people. So 30 million people, it's a big amount of people. It's actually almost 2/3 of the population of the whole Spain. Spain, the country where I'm preaching. Of course, I do travel to the countries, but this is my Prabhupada Desh, the place where I preach more, because my spiritual master encouraged me to do it, and there are not so many Spanish-speaking preachers who are traveling and preaching in Spain. Here in this country, there are about 47 million people. So in New Delhi, you have nearly 2/3 of that amount in one city. So you could say, okay, but if we're preaching so much, why people are not accepting? The fact is that there is a saying, I don't know if in English you have it, we have it in a Spanish language. The translation of the saying is that you can take a horse to the source of water, to the fountain, but we cannot force the horse to drink the water. So similarly, all the preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement in New Delhi and in more places around the world may take the people to the source, may teach the process of devotional service through distribution of books, Harinam Sankirtan in public places, through lectures in our own temples and outside, visiting people at their homes, through prasadam distribution, and in so many different ways. But still, people, they can choose to accept or not to accept. And it seems we see from the results that in Kali Yuga, people tend to be stubborn. And even though the truth is presented before them in a very clear way, they do not want to accept. Isn't it? It's not that your experience. Even in India, should be easier for them, because why should be easier to accept? Because socially speaking, ISKCON is very well considered by the government, by society. It's considered like a prestigious organization, and to join ISKCON is not considered in a negative way. If you join ISKCON, for example, in Spain, of course now ISKCON in Spain has good image. We are nicely considered by the government, and people like Krishna's devotees, but comparatively speaking to India, ISKCON is much smaller, and in Spain, the most prominent religion is Christendom, especially Roman Catholicism, some evangelical movements. So from the social point of view, it's not considered as good as in India. So it should be easy for the people of India to accept, but still people resist to do it, because ultimately people do not want to surrender to God. And we see also, of course, in India, there is an important, we could say, materialistic, scientific, or so-called scientific trend, isn't it? It's quite strong in India. So in that sense, also people may be more skeptical with traditional religion. I noticed this one time, quite a number of years ago, but still I did notice. During 12 years, I was serving as the principal of Bhaktivedanta College located in Radades in Belgium. We were offering degrees on Vaishnava theology and philosophy, accredited by universities in the UK, Lampeter University and Chester University. During the time I was serving in the college in this role, in one of my visits to Sridham Mayapur, I decided to visit the Vishwa Bharati University, which was founded by the late Rabindranath Tagore, a famous Indian poet. This campus was located about three hours drive or so from Sridham Mayapur. And I was somewhat amazed to see that when I made the appointment and I asked them about how to go, they told me they will prefer I will be dressed in civil clothes, meaning in pants and shirt and so on, which in the West, I always visited the universities dressed in sannyasi cloth, or prior to my acceptance of sannyas as a brahmachari, my brahmachari clothes, I will go and visit them, and they were okay with it. And they were smoking, some of these philosophy professors, they were studying Western philosophers. They wanted to explore, I guess, philosophy from another worldview. But they were smoking there during the meeting. And in the West, you don't find, I don't mean to undermine what the professors are contributing, but I'm stating this just to illustrate how this is part of the India mindset. So you have, on the one hand, people who are very pious, who may be ready to accept Krishna consciousness, but you have also a considerable amount of people who are skeptical, who are into mundane science, and who are ready to do things that even in the West are becoming obsolete. So it's like this can explain why people do not surrender so easily and do not accept the Ishavasya principle as quickly as we would like. I hope this answers the question.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you so much. Actually, in India, in the name of religion, there are so many issues. Of course, people are pious here, but in the name of religion, they start fighting within minutes. So they, like Prabhupada used to always say, we should love God. We should try to develop ourselves, our consciousness to such a level that we should start loving God. But it's not the loving nature here, actually. That's the main problem. Karm Kand is main thing here, prevalent, mainly. Okay,
Yes.
Maharaj, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, okay, so I think it's time we can take now a 5-6 minute break. So it's place. So let's come back at 9 past, okay? 9 past Indian time. Is that okay?
Okay, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. We will continue. Before we move to verses 2 and 3, describing the results of following and not following the Ishavasya principle, I would like to focus briefly on a statement that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport. Prabhupada speaks about a life of responsibility. This is something that it comes also in purport number 3. So Srila Prabhupada speaks that human beings should live a life of responsibility and they shouldn't behave like cats and dogs. So this will be a question. Responsibility mean? How this can be practically applied in personal life. Usually speaking, that a responsible person is somebody who is good doing the work in according to his profession. And for example, if the person has a family, takes care of the family and whatever, takes care of the wife, the children, or the husband, or and so on, and that's considered a responsible person. But what does Srila Prabhupada mean when he talks about a life of responsibility? Any reflections on that? Any thoughts?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, can it be like one point, like as I was reading, that we should not break the laws of nature. That just for taste, having taste, people are non-vegetarian. Because in the previous time there was not like anything. So if they are killing cows even, so it's a big sin. So by doing this, nature is disturbed. When nature is disturbed, so consequently everyone has to be everyone has to face the consequences of that and will be punished by it.
Yes, good point. So that's important. So not to break the laws of nature, it's an important part of a life of responsibility. Any other elements that you will include in living a life of responsibility as human beings?
Maharaj, as Mahabharata states that Ahar Nidra Bhaya Metunam Cha verse, that those who are just doing these 4 activities are similar to animals, and but humans are special because they have the ability to follow dharma. That dharmo hi tesho adhiko vishesho dharmena hina pashubi samanam. That if they are not following dharma, then they are similar to pashu only, animals only.
Very good point. So we should not limit our human lives just to these 4 animal activities, but we should focus on self-realization. Like Maharaj Rishabhadev states, tapodi vyam putakajena satvam shudyajasmat brahma saukyam tuanantam. The human life is to actually to practice transcendental austerity, divine austerity. And divine austerity ultimately, it is actually Sanatana Dharma. It is devotional service to the Lord. Yattapasya kaunteya tat gurushvar matarpanam. Krishna states in the Gita that human beings should offer all austerities to him. And naturally this will give the person access to the transcendental bliss of devotional service and the connection with the Lord. Good, very good. Thank you.
Maharaj, one more point is coming in my mind, that as it said that Bharat Bhumite Hoile Manushya Sar, Janma Sartakari Kar Paroka, that like we should perfect our life as well as help others also progress in spiritual life. So this is also our responsibility.
Mhm. Good, good, thank you. Very good. Any other comments or questions?
Maharaj, can we say here that living a God-centered life, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, and executing devotional service is the responsibility of human life?
Very good. Yes. Yes, and this principle of living a God-centered life comes throughout many of the purports in the Ishavasya. So it's very important. We will see later, for example, in relation to education. Education should be God-centered, otherwise it becomes like a cobra with a jewel on its head. So yeah, it's very, very, very important principle. Okay, let's move now to the next verses. So in mantras 2 and 3, as we were mentioning, the consequences for following and not following the Ishavasya principle are explained. And in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada elaborates on these teachings, which you have on the screen. We cannot avoid working. It's not that if we follow a spiritual life, we will stop working, because the nature of the material world is that it is a place where work is compulsory. It's like, in one way, it can be compared to a prison house. In prison house, sometimes there are certain duties or work for the prisoners. They may not like to do it, but they have to do it because that's the rule of the prison house. So the rule of the material world is that we have to struggle for survival. We have to work. Of course, according to our karma, we have to work more or less, but always there will be a struggle for existence. So Srila Prabhupada says, okay, that's granted that work is inevitable, but human beings should follow their particular nature and work in such a way that they don't get entangled in material activities. And this is by doing everything in a God-centered attitude, performing every work for God according to the will of God. Of course, that implies that whatever it is offered, he will gladly accept. For instance, we won't offer contaminated products to God, like eggs, meat, fish, and so on. Of course, that's very clear. But so working in such a way as karma bandhana will not affect us. And this is done through the application of the Ishavasya principle. And Srila Prabhupada underlines again this principle of making all our activities in a God-centered manner. And also he underlines that, and this actually puts into question the prevalent values of contemporary society, in which, for example, human life is considered advanced on the basis, for instance, of scientific and technological advancement. And human beings, many of them, are very proud of science and the new technologies and so on. But actually, Srila Prabhupada says that that's not how you measure the advancement of a civilization. You measure the advancement of a civilization by how much is able to fulfill the responsibility of human life, that is to help people to become self-realized and to become truly happy on the basis of their divine experience. A human body has access to divine experiences, which animals are very much limited to. Of course, we find also in the Bhagavatam that even some animals got access to transcendental devotional service, but this is rather exception, whereas in the case of human beings, there is the possibility of accessing a divine experience. Human life is meant to know God and to love God. This is what human life is about. And then, of course, when we know God and we love God, naturally we also have compassion for others and feel the love also for other living entities, not only humans, but also animals and so on. And then conversely, Srila Prabhupada elaborates on the statement from verse 3, that those who do not fulfill the responsibility of human life are killers of the soul and unavoidably will suffer in hell or in hellish conditions. Even on this planet, hellish conditions can be experienced. For example, like what people are going through in some of the cities in the Ukraine, it's hell. We have some Ukrainian devotee refugees in Spain, and some of them have explained there what's happened in their places, and it's hell. And Srila Prabhupada ends in the commentary of these verses. Srila Prabhupada ends by stating that even if somebody doesn't fulfill in this lifetime his spiritual path, still will be able to continue from wherever he or she ended in the next lifetime. So there is no loss nor diminution in the practice of the Sanatana Dharma or the Ishavasya principle. There is no loss nor diminution. Let's now read the translations of these two important verses. Kurvanne veha karmani jijivishek shatam samaha evam tvajinanyate tosti na karma lipyate nare. If anyone likes to read, please.
One may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on working in that way. For that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma. There is no alternative to this way for man.
Thank you very much. Now we will go to the next verse. Oops, why this is coming? And this is the database, they're asking for donation something. Asurya namate loka andhena tamasa vritaha tamste pretyabhigacchante yekechatma hano janaha. Who likes to read, please?
The killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance.
Thank you very much. And something very important also explained by Srila Prabhupada in this section in the purports is the definition of karma, which you did study in chapter 4 of the Gita. You may remember karma, vikarma, and akarma. Remember the definitions of these terms? And Srila Prabhupada here specifies the term karma bandhana, referring to those entangled by karma and vikarma. So we can say that karma can be subdivided. Karma means action. So can be subdivided into three types of action. One is karma, which refers to material actions sanctioned by the Vedas. So these are actions which are permitted by the Vedas, not directly sinful, like the vikarma, which are prohibited activities in the Vedas. But still they are not God-centered. And therefore, they are considered still material, and they entangled the soul to continue rotating the cycle of birth and death. Even if a person goes to the Svargaloka, to the material heavenly planets, later on there is every chance that will come down. The person will get absorbed in enjoying the fruits of the pious work in previous lives, and then will, as the Gita states in chapter 9, Shine Punye Martyalokam Vishanti, that finally will have to come down to Martyaloka, to the planet of death, and experience again the miseries of the earthly planets. So karma refers to pious material work sanctioned by the Vedas. Vikarma, these are prohibited actions, and akarma are actions performed with the Ishavasya consciousness, understanding that God is the proprietor, and offering everything to Him. Then it becomes karma yoga, and then when karma yoga matures, becomes bhakti yoga, and then it becomes akarma, free from karma bandhana. Because actually karma, the etymological meaning of the word express karma bandhana. The term karma can be divided into two words. Kara refers to the verb to do, and ma means me. So the idea that I am the doer, this is actually karma. I think I am the doer. And this is actually, as Krishna explains in chapter 3 of the Gita, you may remember, prakrite kriyamanani unnai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate. That the bewildered soul thinks to be the doer of the activities which actually are performed by material nature. So karma in one way is the external expression of ahankara, which etymologically means the same. Ahamkara, I am the doer. So the ahankara, the false ego, brings me to perform material activities and to get entangled in the cycle of birth and death. Any questions or comments on this topic?
Yes,
Karma,
Maharaj.
karma bandhana.
Yes, Maharaj. I have a question. Maharaj, the chain of karmic reactions is really so strong. On daily basis, we are hearing over this karmic reactions, chain of karmic reactions. So, could you please give us a golden tip to overcome this chain of karmic reactions?
Yes, the easiest way is through sadhu sangha. When we associate with devotees who are engaged in sanatana dharma, in the pure devotional service to the Lord, according to the instructions of the acharyas, we are carried by them, and we also experience the same. So that's my personal experience, and that's explained in Shastra in many different sections of the Shastras, especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Also, we find in the Gita, but especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the importance of sadhu sangha is mentioned many, many times. And my personal experience is that this is what makes me continue serving Krishna and the devotees after many years. By association, it becomes very, very natural and very easy. If we distance ourselves from sadhu sangha, we are bound to be affected by this gene of karmic reactions. It comes back, it's there. It's like, for example, also, like if we don't clean a room for several days, then it becomes dirty. So if we don't practice devotional service every day, and if we do not associate with devotees as frequently as possible, then we become polluted. And this gene of karmic reactions comes back. I hope this answers the question and addresses it.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, let's look. I have some other topics we can explore on this, on the main themes of these verses. Yes, I would like to go here. This will be a preaching application exercise, and maybe for this we can divide it into groups. Let us see. Aradhya Gadadhar, Prabhu, you will be able to help me to make a few groups.
I think Aradhya Gadadhar is not there.
Let me see, 1 second. I'm trying to check who is there. Just 1 second, because Mataji, Sampada Soni told me she had to go. She mentioned that he will support me with breaking up of groups. Is there any among you who can do it? Or
Tarun Prabhu is the host. You should be able to do it. Tarun Prabhu is the host.
Tarun Prabhu, are you there? Okay, what to do? Yeah, I thought it would be good to divide it into groups. Others you can discuss in one big group, but let me see if I can. I don't think I have the capacity to form groups because it's not, I don't see here. Let me see. At least it should let me as the co-host in terms of making groups. It should be programmed for, if any of you can communicate with them later on to, if they have to go, I understand that sometimes they may have to go, but there should be, I should have the capacity to make groups. Otherwise it limits the class. Okay, let's do it as a whole. I like sometimes to divide into groups because people who may be more shy to participate in the big group, they may do it more relaxed in smaller groups. And it's also good for the learning. So I won't do that every day, but some days it's useful to do it.
Maharaj, please, could you please repeat the question once?
Yes. The question is, now what we want to do is to identify ways, it's on the screen, the second question, the key components of the Ishavasya principle we discussed in the first part of the class. Now we want to explore ways of utilizing this principle as a relevant message to contemporary audiences. So in what context you can use this verse and the teachings of these verses in contemporary audiences.
Okay, Maharaj, thank you.
So let's open the discussion. Who likes to continue? If anyone is shy, you can write. Okay, Arun Prabhu says that he joined from mobile, so he cannot make it.
Yes, Maharaj. Like, if someone can volunteer who has joined from laptop, if he can make the room breakout room.
Yes, or maybe you have the power to, because I don't see I can make groups here. If you give me, I don't know how to program, I'm not so expert, but I could try if there is. Of course, if there is somebody who knows how to do it and has laptop and volunteers, that's better. Then we can do it in groups. We'll make 3 groups.
Maharaj, there will be an option of breakout rooms there in the laptop. If you see in the top and bottom, you can see there is either there will be 3 dots. There will be 3 dots, and if you see, there will be breakout rooms as an option.
Let me see, I'm checking. I don't see it here. Okay, let me see. I think the 3 dots are here. Okay. I click the 3 dots. It's written. There are 5 things that come up: participants, invite, chat, pause recording, stop recording. This is what comes up. I click on participants and I can see those of you who are there. Okay, now you made me now I should have the power to do it. Let me check.
Yes, I made you the host now. Can you check now?
Yes, now it's there. Yes, good. I want to assign automatically. Okay, I will create three places. So please go. I have selected automatically, so the groups you will go will be 3-4 participants per session. Please go and discuss the question. Is the question clear to everybody? how to use the Ishavasya principle for preaching to contemporary audiences.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so you please go into your groups. You will have about 10 minutes. Hare Krishna. The groups are closing, so in less than 1 minute, everybody should be here. So we wait for all the others to return. How did the group work go? What we can do now, we will take from
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
one spokesperson from each group. We can go around, so each group can say one of the options of the preaching proposals you made about how to use this Ishavasya principle and teachings, and we can go around and we see how many come up. So please, a spokesperson from each group. Who will be the spokesperson? Anyone from each group, but say from group number 1, who likes to.
Our group, Her Grace Rukmani Hari Sevini Mataji is the spokesperson, Maharaji.
Okay, so who will speak? What was you can say one of the topics you selected for.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, we have, shall I start speaking or?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Maharaj, we were just thinking, but at the end we found out 3 verses, like the 15.15, it's very famous verse, Bhagavad Gita, Vedesha aham Vedasya Sarves Aham Veda Vedyo Vedanta with Vedikrit Evjaham. Krishna is saying that I am to be knower in all the Vedas. And we were thinking that if there is a person in the Vedas, all the Vedas, if only one person is to be known, that person, just by, if we don't have, as we need to preach to a common person. So if we do not have, if you do not know anything, it is very clearly to be understood that if we don't have to we do not know anything, but if all the Vedas, from all the Vedas, if any one person is to be known, that person should be a very high of supremacy. So that, and from this we can understand that, and Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, in many verses, he says that I am to be known, and now he's saying that in all the Vedas I am to be known, and in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says more words that surrender unto me, surrender unto me, offer me everything. And one more verse he say, Matta Paratanam Nanyat Kinchit Asti Dhananjaya Mai Sarvam Idam Proktam Sutre Mani Gana Iva. So like Krishna is saying in this verse also that all the planets, everything are strung on me, and I am the thread of it. So this is also like, and so, and from this we can understand. And one more, the best thing is like, uh, if we have to if we have to run a small machine, we need a mechanic or any, there is a one engineer is there behind it. And to run a big big world, how can there will be no one behind it? So behind this nature, sun is rising, moon is coming, weathers are changing, seasons are coming, everything's are coming at their place. So there is some proprietor, and that proprietor is God, Krishna. So nothing, for small machine we need a manager, so how can we say that there is no God? So we have to understand that everything is coming from God, like this. And Srila Prabhupada also says that one person was saying that Prabhupada asked, what do you do? That person said that I make glass. So Prabhupada says from glass to make glass, from where you collect the things. He said that from the sea I collect this, and I collect sand from the sea, salt like this, and then I make it. So if there are so many things already provided, so he is able to make like things. So this is that Krishna is there, a God is there who is providing us everything, who has created this nature. We there are all modes are there. So, Mara, sorry, I'm not able to explain.
Yes, you are explaining nicely. Yes. Why you say you are not able to explain? You are explaining nicely. So this will be for a general public. What audience did you select for? You are presenting good arguments from Bhagavad Gita and examples of life and Srila Prabhupada's preaching about how we need to accept God as the proprietor of everyone. So the arguments are good. What will be the audience? The audience will be a general audience in India, or that's for non-devotees who are receptive to Krishna consciousness. Anyone can reply also, like you work as a group, you are representing the group. So if you need help, your colleagues in the group can help you also, so no problem. What audience were you thinking of while discussing all the arguments Rukmini Harisevini Mataji was presenting? Was that in general, like general preaching, or to a specific group of people where you will present these arguments? Anyway, we can leave it like this. So the arguments are good, and they could be.
Maharaj, shall I say myself?
Yes,
then?
you can say.
Okay, Maharaj, when I said that for the example of that small machinery, that to run a small machinery, we need a manager. So that was for the common people, because you actually gave us the question that we have to make Ishavasya principle to make understand to the common man. So this was for the common man, and actually we thought about the common man only, but somehow we were not getting points. More points.
Okay, it's good. It's good. It's useful. The arguments were good, and I think in India, if you give these arguments, yeah, you can touch, influence favorably people. So yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thank you. Okay, another group who can say one of the options you selected, how to use the Ishavasya verse. To contemporary audiences. Contemporary audiences, it's open not just for the common people, may also include all other audiences. Contemporary means from today's world, so can be many different audiences. Can be scientists.
Yes, Maharaj, shall we start?
Yes.
Maharaj, I am representing group number 3. So I have my colleagues Manmohan Hari Prabhu and Vidyavati Mataji. So Maharaj, my point is on Ishavasya principle, preaching to general public. If I get the opportunity, or if ISKCON leaders get the opportunity to preach President Putin of Russia, then definitely he can be preached. Why are you bent on killing so many innocent people of Ukraine? You are not God. You are just servant of God. Why are you considering yourself as God? Why are you bent on killing him? Then Maharaj, I would like to invite Manmohan Prabhu. Manmohan Hari Prabhu was saying that it's not the principle on the outside ISKCON. even within ISKCON, we can say this principle that even the people, even the devotees who are at the center point of some services, they also consider themselves something greater. So I would like to invite him only to say something. Yes, Manmohan Hari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dalit Nam.
Hare Krishna.
This point was in relation to the question Rashtraman Krishna Prabhu asked earlier, that why the people are fighting even after so much preaching. So that was that point, that people are fighting within ISKCON also. That was point relevant to that only. So what I said was that we, as you said earlier, Maharaj, yesterday only, that there was a group in which country I forgot, Maharaj. So where they said that we'll be preaching, but we'll say very few words. So I don't remember the exact statement. So that what I was saying, that if we try to bring this quality within ourselves, within our practice only, Ishavasya Midam Sarvam, so that will automatically preach the other people. So if we stop considering ourselves the controller, so when I do services, Maharaj, yeah, I see all the demonic qualities coming out of me. So I try to become the controller. I try to become the leader. Never the what do you call? I define my name. My name has a das, but I define my name. I try to become the controller, not a das. So if I try to make myself das and just justify my name, so I think it will be a very powerful preaching. So that's what I meant. Thank
Very
you,
good point. So actually, you have mentioned 2 points from your group.
Yes, Maharaj, sorry to interrupt you. One more point we have. I would like to invite Vidyavati Mataji now.
One second, because we want to give opportunity to group number 2.
Okay, Maharaj. Okay, Maharaj. No issue. No issue.
So I will just repeat the 2 points that came from so far from group number 3, and then the reason we go around is to share, because maybe otherwise maybe the last group, some of the topics may repeat in different groups. So in this way, everybody participates in contributing. So, but from the group came 2 points. One was in terms of using it for preaching in terms of socio-political issues and war, such as the case of Mr. Putin invading the Ukraine, even though he tries to call it something else, but it's clearly an invasion. So that's one important element that can be, the Ishavasya principle can be used in terms of these type of issues. And then also in terms of personal example, and I think the point Manmohan Hari Prabhu was mentioning is very, very relevant, that we shouldn't think that this is only for persons outside ISKCON, but we should walk our talk, because many times there are conflicts in ISKCON because we do not practice sufficiently the Ishavasya principle. And many of the conflicts that may arise can become solved if we practice the Ishavasya principle. So these two points are very important. Let's now move to group number 2. If any speaker from group number 2 like to contribute, please.
Maharaj, we had mostly a lot of network issue, so we were not able to.
Oh, I see. So you couldn't.
We had a lot of network issue.
we could not discuss much, Maharaj, but we had only one point, that in general life, when we are talking to people and we were trying to preach, we can say that, everything has an origin and everything is come into existence because of something bigger than us. So that bigger is Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is the existence that we have here. So everything is not just because of nothing. We have some kind of force taking care of everything. But Maharaj, I have a very, pressing question. At least I feel it pressing, and I have faced it, personally while preaching, especially, contemporary people, as in young people, 23, 24, 25-year-old. When they get, Maharaj, bent on something that no, it cannot happen. There is no God, or there is nothing, or this is mythology, or these are people who existed, were powerful, and you cannot convince them, Maharaj. I have read this Gita, I have read that Mahabharata, it's written this, it's written that. But somehow it's so difficult to convince them that, it's a fight, and you end up actually becoming quiet, and it feels as if, I'm sorry for the lack of a better word, but they have won over.
The last thing I didn't understand, they are, you mentioned the last, it seems they are yes, I couldn't understand the last phrase, short phrase. I didn't understand everything you said, but not the last part.
So much it happens, when you're trying to preach to young people, like 24-year-old, 25-year-old people, and you tell them, or you try to talk to them about Krishna or something, they get stuck up on the fact that no, this is all, a myth. This did not happen. We have read this, we have read that, we have read Bhagavad Gita from others also. It doesn't state anything that Krishna is supreme, or Krishna was, just some other mystic or a powerful person who had potencies, but actually did not do anything. I mean, they get stuck up on the fact that the existence of Krishna is only on material plane. So that way, when you try to tell them that it actually exists, or there are Vedas or Puranas which are supporting these facts, they keep on arguing, but they don't. It's not a very constructive discussion that you ever have with them. So and it feels as if ultimately they have won over, that whatever they are saying is correct and whatever we are trying to tell is incorrect. So in that situation, how do we deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a discussion in the family, or you talk about general youth who are not very close to you. I cannot hear.
Much I've spoken to people who are in the family also. I've spoken to people, general college going youngsters these days. So there's this and there's that. Both things are there.
Yeah, I mean, if they have difficulty in accepting the divinity of Krishna, you can say, okay, let's put aside the divinity of Krishna and let's discuss about the philosophy taught in Bhagavad Gita. Because, for example, there is suffering in the world. So you can discuss all these issues, get into the suffering and why if we don't want to suffer, why do we suffer? Why, if they claim that science is so advanced, why still so many people are suffering? So that means we are not so advanced in science, isn't it? And that means science is not the solution. But of course, also another consideration is that if somebody doesn't want to listen, don't waste time to preach somebody who has a challenging attitude. Why you will waste time? You have in India how many million people? So many, 1+ billion people. So you have enough people to preach to. So you shouldn't waste time with people who are not willing to listen and who are proud and challenging, just because they are young men and women who didn't experience yet enough the pangs of material life. Sometimes people, due to their karma, they come in a well-to-do families and they are more or less materially comfortable. Maybe when you talk to these people after 20 years, they may think differently because they will have experienced the suffering of material life. Is that okay? I have a cold, so that's why my voice sometimes doesn't come very clear. I will take its time to end, but I can take briefly one more point from group number 1 and group number 3. And then I may say something and then we will close the session. Any more points from group number 1? Otherwise, group number 3 wanted to contribute. I
Thank
say
you,
this,
Maharaj. Thank you.
I was, because
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. From group number 3, we have another point from Vidyavati Mataji. So,
okay.
Vidyavati Mataji, please continue. You please raise your point of slaughter houses.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Maharaj, I just sent my point in the chat section also that probably as devotees we can go for signing some petitions to ban the slaughterhouses. Like Prabhupada is mentioning in this chapter that the animals have been allotted their quotas. So tiger, cows, they are eating only as per their quota. So humans should also understand that vegetarian food is their quota. And nowadays, because of the COVID pandemic, people have part of the society has realized that due to the slaughterhouses and due to the killing of animals, such calamities of the pandemic come up. So taking that example, we can make them understand that to save yourself from such calamities and to save yourself from sinful reactions, it is very important to sign some petition so that the government can close the slaughterhouses.
Very good, thank you. So using the Ishavasya principle verse to preach to people in regards to how humanity fits itself, like to promote a vegetarian diet, and particularly to stop slaughterhouses, certainly it's a very good, very relevant and approach that can be used. Recently, I was already a few months back, it was when the war between Russia and Ukraine started at the end of February. I was preaching in Brussels, in Belgium, and every Saturday they have a gathering for Russian-speaking devotees. They have devotees from Russia, from Ukraine, Lithuania, Armenia, Belarus, and other countries, which all of them, they speak Russian. They have their country language, but all of them, they have Russian as a common language. And these are kind of countries which are, we can say, culturally, they are like brother countries. The people are very much connected. And somebody asked me, one young lady devotee asked me that someone asked her a question that how come if God exists, how can he allow the war in Ukraine to happen? I replied to her by quoting a famous Russian writer, Leo Tolstoy. You may have heard about Leo Tolstoy. It's a Russian writer. I'll write the name in case you want to check it and write it on the chat. Leo Tolstoy seemed to be a knowledgeable man, and he stated that as long as there are slaughterhouses, there will be war in the world. So yes, certainly to use the Ishavasya principle to preach against animal killing and against a diet based on meat products, it's a very good contribution. And we can present this in different forums like vegetarian forums, yoga forums. Like nowadays, there are many people who claim to practice yoga and they eat meat. That's totally against the original yamas and niyamas from yoga, from which ahimsa, non-violence, is the most important. To end, I will mention two more audiences you may consider for using this, the Ishavasya principle. One is for conferences on distribution of wealth, poverty and distribution of wealth. Actually, poverty and distribution of wealth is, there is poverty and there is unbalanced distribution of wealth due to a lack of the Ishavasya principle, to a lack of human beings to practice it. So certainly this is a very relevant topic for conferences on these matters. It can be used. Also for ecology, for instance, the human beings use the term exploitation of nature, exploitation of cattle, exploitation of like agricultural exploitation. And this idea of exploitation indicates the lack of understanding and practice of the Ishavasya principle. We should care for the cattle, care for the earth, care for human beings, not exploit them. Exploit, this is what asuras do, what demons do. So we need to, in order to change like all the ecological problems can be solved by a proper application of the Ishavasya principle. And this can be connected also to other practical arguments according to the field of expertise we may have. It may be the case that we can apply this principle. For example, if someone is expert in ecology, so can use ecological arguments. For instance, with the same amount of food we feed animals for producing meat, if we use the grains to feed directly the human beings instead of artificially feeding animals that will be killed, we can feed 10 to 20 times more human beings than by feeding them with a meat diet. So all these arguments can be integrated in relation to the Ishavasya principle. I hope this is relevant to your understanding and your preaching of these verses of today. Tomorrow we will continue with verses 4 and 5. So please do the reading for reading and preparation in your handbooks for tomorrow's class. We meet again by Krishna's grace at the same time at 7 p.m. Indian time. Thank you very much. Hare
Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you so much.